Moving on to story number 2 for this week. IO Interactive. They have announced, kind of sort of announced that, hey, we're working on a new project. It's not Bond, it's not Hitman, it's a fantasy game. And this is interesting. It's very exciting because this was first reported on by Windows Central about like 2 years ago or so. It's been a while since we heard this rumor, this report that IO Interactive was working on an online, was working on a fantasy game of some sort that had like dragons in it. That was all we knew. We didn't know much more about it than that, other than the fact that it was also reported to be an Xbox exclusive. Now, finally, after some time, IO Interactive, they are basically saying, hey, we are indeed working on a fantasy game, but we did get a little bit more information from them in their this kind of blog announcement post that they posted up on their site. So it's called, right now, it's called Project Fantasy. And I'm not going to read the whole post here because some of it is just like, hey, we've been doing this for a while. And, it's just not too much about the actual game, but I'll read the paragraphs that involve the actual game itself. So they say here, now we are sharing with all of you that we are embarking on a new adventure, one that expands our creativity, our capabilities, and in some sense, our identity. We are building a new world, a new IP, an online fantasy RPG, a world and a game built from the core to entertain players and expand for many years to come. It feels familiar, yet at the same time, IOI is going on a journey unlike any we have been on before. For many, this journey is also a deeply personal one that began long before we started making games for a living, and it started with the fantasy genre. From the fighting fantasy books compelling you to choose your path alone against wizards, lizards, and thief kings, so the togetherness, camaraderie, agony, and delight found around the tabletop. For some, it meant taking the role of a game master, part storyteller, part AI opponent, part guide, part villain. For everyone around the table, it meant creativity, imagination, building a world together, and a shared goal in creating a great game experience. This idea that a diverse group of individuals with different skills and strengths can work together and become more than the sum of their parts is what inspires us. It inspires the fantasy world we're building. It inspires how we build it. I'm going to stop right there because after that, they say, hey, we have multiple studios and so on and so forth. Fantasy, an online fantasy RPG, very interesting. The RPG side of things, cool. Fantasy, awesome. The online side of things, though, is where this gets very interesting for a couple different reasons. One, we're going off the line here that they say that this is a game, a world in a game built from the core to entertain players and expand for many years to come. That line right there screams to me live service slash like a shared world game similar to like Destiny in a way. And the recent light of a number of live service games getting shut down, we had Marvel's Avengers, which floundered and all. We have Suicide Squad, which is just utterly disappointing everyone by the fact that it's essentially a live service game. In light of all that, it's like, okay, IO Interactive, online fantasy RPG, awesome, but it's an online game looking like it's going to be a live service one. Who knows when it's going to come out? I mean, it seems like they're pretty early on in production right now. All that we have for this game is a piece of key art showing three figures from behind, seemingly stepping out of a cave, and you could see like the world. They're looking out at the world. One of the characters, we don't see any of their faces, but one of them seems like a regular human. One is an elf on the side. See their long ears, and on the right side, we see a character that you would imagine is probably a dwarf or so, just based on their build and their height, their stature, and they have weapons and armor and all like that. So it seems like it's gonna be a high fantasy type of thing. And looking at the art, it gives me a bit of Fable slash World of Warcraft vibes, just based off the art alone. The art, the way the art style, art direction looks. It reminds me of Fable and World of Warcraft some. Uh, so who knows how serious this game is going to be, how lighthearted it's going to be. We have no idea for any of that. But it's live service, and that who knows where this game could go. Like who knows how people are going to feel about live service by the time this game comes out. I would imagine like what we got the report first 2 years ago. They're just now talking about themselves. You would imagine that, at least in my head, this game is not coming out probably until 2025, likely, maybe 2026. If it's 2024, it's almost certainly got to be late 2024. I see no way in which this game comes out before like September 2024. And that is like a super, super optimistic, hopeful look at things. I think more likely is 2025 when this comes out, and from a realistic perspective, just based off of the timeline that we know of for this game. So, what are people going to be thinking about live service come 2025? What's the live service element of this game going to be like? What is there going to be battle pass stuff going on? Is it going to be more so in the footsteps of a Destiny? Because I feel like if it's in the footsteps of a Destiny and they approach it in a smart way like that, then it could go over well. If it's a world where there is rich lore and world building behind it, there are interesting characters, like an engrossing story, and it's one that they want to build on and continue to tell over years. And you have your main campaign, and I'm just gonna go based off the Destiny model of your main story, and then like you have your seasons in between, and then the next year it's another expansion of some sort. Like if they want to follow that model with this in a online fantasy world, like with elves and dwarves and stuff like that and dragons, that could be really exciting, really cool. Because I don't think aside from World of Warcraft, that's an MMO though. That's not like, I mean, Destiny 2 is basically an MMO at this point, but there aren't really any live service fantasy like games like that on consoles that would kind of feed that desire, that need for, man, an online fantasy game that's just constantly alive, constantly thriving. That could be really cool. That could be really exciting. Uh, it's just a matter of, man, how is that execution going to play out? How is it going to be in practice? What new things is it going to bring to the gaming landscape? Now, this is IOI. And while I haven't played the Hitman games, I'm aware of them. I think I played like a bit of a demo or something for the first Hitman from the World of Assassination trilogy and all like that. But I'm aware of them, and I'm aware that like when they design their levels are like meticulously designed in terms of like the people that are in them, what they're doing, what they're saying, what is placed where, how everything looks, so on and so forth. So I could only imagine how detailed and intimate and lived in a fantasy world, a fantasy RPG from them could be. That is very exciting. I would love to see what that world looks like, what like how they just what that world is. I would love to be in it, see what they do with it and all. And I can imagine just how they would again just support that game and that world post launch. Like they've done such a great job with the Hitman trilogy post launch. Like all their post launch support for those games has been stellar. I could only imagine what they would do with this. And like when you read the post and it talks about how the team that they have working on it, like they lived and breathed tabletop RPGs, DMing, and so on and so forth. Like I get the feeling that this is a team that is really passionate about this and would be able to make a really, really, really interesting and exciting world that just for you to live in and explore. And I think that's exciting. I think that's cool, and I think this has potential. If it does a share world thing well, if it does it right, if it tells great stories, if it has interesting gameplay, if it has just so many different things. But again, there's the side. This is the thing of how's the live service aspect of it going to shake out? How will people feel about live service by the time this game comes out? Will we be like so done with live service that we don't want another one, another big AAA one like that? How are we going to feel about it? There's so many different questions to think about. Then there's the Xbox side of things. Is it an Xbox exclusive? IO did not mention that at all in their post, but if we're going by reports, it's an Xbox exclusive. So, it being an Xbox exclusive, we then have to take it into the context of Xbox fantasy RPGs, of which by the time it comes out, if we're assuming it comes out 2025, Fable will be out or should be out or will nearly be out, and Elder Scrolls 6 will be out, not will be out, will most probably not be out by 2025. We will probably be hearing more about Elder Scrolls 6 by then, and will be coming shortly after that, maybe like a year or so after that. And Avowed should be out by 2025. So that's three other fantasy RPGs in the Xbox camp that this one will be competing with. Of course, the big one being Elder Scrolls 6, whenever that releases, that'd be like the granddaddy of them all. And then I would argue Fable underneath that, just based off the name recognition alone. And then Avowed after that, because it's by Obsidian, and Obsidian's been killing it in terms of their recent game releases. So, like, yes, they're all fantasy RPGs, seemingly doing different things. Elder Scrolls, it's going to be a Bethesda game. You know what Bethesda RPGs are like. You know what it's going to be like. Single player, deep world, so on and so forth. Fable, we've got to see. How much is it going to be like the older Fable? Is it going to be more like taking things a different direction? Recent reports have kind of said that, hey, this game, the team is still trying to figure out what they want to do with it. Do they want to be more like Witcher like? Is it going to be, where's it going? Who knows? So, like, there's that side of things. And with it, compete with IO's game here, Project Fantasy, competing against those as being another one in what will seemingly be a short time frame, it begs the question of, okay, how is it going to perform? Are we going to be as impressed by it, as interested in it when it's releasing around the same time or in a short window before or after these other three fantasy RPGs from Xbox? It's a question to consider. Do I think it's going to be a huge deal? Do I think it's going to be a make or break for whether or not this game is successful or good? No, not necessarily. I don't think so. I mean, you could look at PlayStation, for example, and PlayStation, they're known for their third person narrative action adventure games. God of War, The Last of Us, Ghost of Tsushima, so on and so forth. They're all third person action adventure games, but they each fill a different niche of sorts. Ghost of Tsushima is more stealth, open world action adventure type, and then in the vein of Assassin's Creed. Horizon, that's more so in the vein of like a Witcher. I'm putting quotes around it. It's not exactly like Witcher, but you get what I mean. There's more hunting and exploration to do in that. God of War is very linear, very narrative heavy. Same with The Last of Us. So like they're different niches, different genres, different environments, and all like that. But it's all like fantasy, all fantasy. Okay, that's one thing. All RPGs. Okay, that's like they're all in the exact same bubble. It's going to be a thing of how they each differentiate themselves from it. And I'm hoping that IOIs is able to differentiate itself enough to stand out from those other three. I would hate to see it get just seen as, it's just another one of those from Xbox coming within the next 2 years, and within the same 2-year time frame as all these others. Like, I don't want it to end up being seen as just this what's the word? Not amorphous. I just don't want it to be just seen as like this like another one of these games, this fantasy RPG blah. There's a word I'm looking for. I'm blanking on the word right now. But I would hate for that to happen because of when it's coming out as an Xbox exclusive. That would be a shame, because IO definitely deserves to have its game be given the spotlight whenever it releases. It's a new thing. It's a new IP from them, another original idea. I'm really rooting for this game. Of course, we have yet to see anything of it. We know no concrete details about gameplay or anything like that. So, I mean, by the time we actually see the game, we could see it and could be like, oh, well, it just looks okay. Not because it's yet another fantasy RPG, but more so it's because, oh, the gameplay looks fine. Just, hopefully that's not the case though. I'm rooting for it. I think it could be good. I think it will be interesting. Uh, we really just have to wait and see what happens with it when we hear about it, so on and so forth. Let me know down in the comment section what you think, what you hope to hear or get from IOI's Project Fantasy, this fantasy RPG. Do you want it to be something that follows in the mold, in the model of Destiny when it comes to it, how it does its live service stuff? Do you want it to maybe do something different? What type of gameplay do you want from it? Do you want it to be a similar tone of sorts to Starfield? I mean, not Starfield, Elder Scrolls, or do you want it to be a bit more like, say, I don't know, World of Warcraft or Fable in terms of tone and aesthetic and all like that? Let me know down in the comment section what you want. I could go many different ways on it in terms of what I want from it. But at the end of the day, I just want it to be a fun game, new, interesting, exciting world to explore. Because I like fantasy. Fantasy is cool. Fantasy is fun, and being able to get lost in a new fantasy world, a new fantasy RPG, nonetheless. What more could I ask for?